All right, so we're diving into Napoleon Bonaparte today. It seems like everyone wants to go deeper with him than just the military genius thing.
Right.
We all know the basics.
Yeah.
Born in Corsica, Emperor of France, conquered most of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But these sources you sent me, they hint at something more.
Oh, yeah.
Almost unbelievable,
Yeah, it's fascinating. You have the well-documented military brilliance, of course.
Right.
But then you have these persistent theories, almost like whispers, suggesting other forces might have been at play in Napoleon's success.
Yeah, it's not just about what he achieved, but how he did it. Like, some of his victories were so decisive, and his strategies were so unpredictable that historians struggle to explain them through conventional military thinking.
Exactly. Like, take the Battle of Austerlitz, 1805. Napoleon was outnumbered by the combined forces of Austria and Russia, but he completely outmaneuvered them, predicted their movements with almost uncanny accuracy. So this victory solidified his reputation as a military prodigy, but it also sparked speculation. Was it pure genius? Or was it an incredible stroke of luck? Or could there be something more?
And that's where things get interesting, because one source claims Napoleon might have had a device, a piece of technology that was far beyond anything available at the time, that allowed him to receive real-time intelligence on the battlefield.
Wow.
An earpiece, basically.
An earpiece.
Yeah.
This idea of an advanced earpiece, it sounds like science fiction.
Totally.
But it's a theory that's been circulating for some time. And this source even cites a supposed eyewitness account, describing the device as a metal spiral worn by Napoleon during battles.
A metal spiral. That's incredibly vague. Do any of the sources give more concrete evidence, or is it just speculation and hearsay?
Unfortunately, concrete proof is elusive. The historical record has a lot of gaps when it comes to Napoleon's personal effects, particularly those related to this alleged device. And some sources suggest that this lack of evidence might be deliberate, hinting at a possible cover-up by people wanting to protect Napoleon's legacy, or perhaps even to conceal the true origin of the technology.
Hold on, a cover-up. Are we really suggesting there's some kind of conspiracy about Napoleon's victories? That's a bold claim.
It is, but think about it. If a device like this existed and fell into the wrong hands, imagine the potential for disruption. It could change the balance of power. And governments have a long history of concealing information that could threaten the established order. Look at incidents like Watergate, or the classified documents surrounding the Roswell incident.
Right.
Those are from a different time and context, I know.
Yeah.
But they illustrate how powerful forces might try to protect sensitive information.
I get that. But I'm still skeptical. Even if there was a cover-up, wouldn't there be at least some trace of this technology? And wouldn't somebody have spoken out, revealed the truth at some point?
That's a fair point. But you have to consider the context. In Napoleon's time, the very concept of advanced technology like this would have been so foreign, so beyond comprehension, it might have been easily dismissed or misconstrued. And those who suspected something, they might have been silenced or discredited. There's stories buried beneath the weight of official narratives.
Okay, let's say for the sake of argument that there was something to this earpiece theory. Where would such advanced technology have come from? Some of the sources seem to suggest an extraterrestrial origin.
Yes, some sources go down that path, venturing into the truly unconventional. The idea of alien intervention in human affairs is, of course, highly speculative.
Sure.
But it's worth noting that these theories often come up when we see phenomena that defy easy explanation. It pushes us to consider possibilities outside of our current understanding.
I'm not ready to embrace the alien thing just yet, but I have to admit, the idea that Napoleon might have possessed knowledge or technology far beyond his time is incredibly intriguing. It's almost as if he was operating on a different level, seeing things others couldn't.
That's a keen observation, and it connects to another fascinating aspect of these sources, the prophecies surrounding Napoleon's life.
Yeah, let's shift gears to the prophecies. The sources mention several predictions that seem to foreshadow Napoleon's rise and fall with remarkable accuracy.
Yes, there are numerous accounts of prophecies, some dating back centuries before Napoleon's birth, that seemingly foretell his destiny. One, attributed to Nostradamus, speaks of a great Corsican who would rise to empire but ultimately fall from grace.
Wow, that's incredibly specific. Are we talking about self-fulfilling prophecies? Did people read these predictions and subconsciously shape events to fit the narrative?
The power of suggestion is undeniable. Throughout history, prophecies have influenced the actions of individuals and even entire societies. You can look at the impact of the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece, or the prophecies of Merlin in Arthurian legend. Whether accurate or not, prophecies can have a huge impact on human behavior.
So, are we suggesting that Napoleon's destiny was predetermined? That he was simply fulfilling a script written centuries ago? Or was his rise to power the result of his own ambition and actions?
That's the central question, isn't it? The sources present competing perspectives, leaving it up to the reader to decide whether these prophecies were accurate predictions of the future or merely coincidences interpreted through the lens of hindsight.
It's fascinating to think that Napoleon's life might have been shaped by forces beyond his control, be it advanced technology, unseen forces, or even the power of prophecy. But before we get too carried away with these theories, let's step back and examine another crucial element of Napoleon's success: his undeniable military genius. You know, it's easy to get lost in all these almost fantastical theories about Napoleon. But even if we just forget about the earpiece and the prophecies for a minute, there's no denying the man was a brilliant strategist. I mean, these sources you shared really get into some of his most famous battles. And it's so clear he just had this incredible mind for military tactics.
Absolutely. Napoleon's innovations in warfare were groundbreaking. Like, he revolutionized how armies were organized and trained and deployed. One of the sources you sent me actually focuses on his use of the corps system,
Right.
which allowed him to divide his armies into smaller, more independent units.
Oh, interesting. So instead of one giant, slow-moving army, he had these smaller, more agile groups.
Yeah, capable of rapid movement and coordinated action.
That makes a lot of sense.
This flexibility was so important to Napoleon's success. He could outmaneuver his opponents, concentrate his forces at critical points, and exploit any weaknesses in their lines. The source even gives a detailed account of the Battle of Jena Auerstedt in 1806, where Napoleon used this very tactic to completely defeat the Prussian army, despite being outnumbered.
So even without any mysterious technology or supernatural guidance, just Napoleon's strategic thinking was enough to make him a very powerful force.
Oh, without a doubt. His ability to analyze the battlefield, predict his opponent's moves, and make bold decisions under pressure was remarkable.
But if he was such a military mastermind, why did he ultimately fall from power? I mean, strategic brilliance alone can't guarantee victory forever, right?
You're right. Napoleon's downfall was a complex mix of things. Overextension of his empire, the rise of nationalism in the territories he had conquered, and obviously some pretty critical military defeats like Waterloo.
Yeah. The sources also mention a growing sense of hubris in Napoleon's later years, a belief in his own invincibility, which may have played a part in his downfall. It's almost as if the weight of his own ambition and just the pressure of maintaining this vast empire ultimately overwhelmed him.
That's an important point, because even the most brilliant strategist can't escape human fallibility. And the sources you chose do highlight the psychological aspect of leadership. How power and success can sometimes affect decision-making, sometimes negatively.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's go back to those prophecies for a second. The sources mention that some of them actually predicted Napoleon's downfall.
Yes, some prophecies, while seeming to celebrate his quick rise to power, also warn of a dramatic fall from grace. One source quotes a prophecy that says the great Corsican would be betrayed by those closest to him, and that his empire would crumble like sand.
Wow. It's kind of eerie how accurate those predictions seem to be when compared to the actual events of Napoleon's life. It makes you wonder if he knew about these prophecies and if they had any influence over his actions.
That's a question historians have been debating for centuries. Did Napoleon believe in these prophecies? Did they weigh on him? Maybe created a sense of inevitability about his fate? Or did he just dismiss them as superstition?
It's really interesting to think about what kind of psychological effect those prophecies might have had on him, even if he didn't believe in them. Imagine the pressure of knowing that your downfall has been predicted. Could that have contributed to that hubris and overconfidence that we see in the sources?
Possibly, yeah. It speaks to the bigger question of how belief, even in things that seem irrational, can actually shape the course of history.
So we've got this really complex interplay of things going on. Napoleon's undeniable military genius, the possibility of him having advanced technology or knowledge, the influence of prophecies, and then the mental and emotional pressures of being in power. It's almost too much to think about all at once.
It is, but that's what's so fascinating about history. It's not a straightforward story. It's more like a tapestry with all these different threads, each one a different perspective, a different interpretation of what happened.
Let's touch on one more interesting thing that the sources bring up: the unexplained symbols in some of Napoleon's personal writings. Some people believe these could be alien codes or messages. What do you think?
Well, trying to interpret symbols is complicated and often subjective. While some people might see these symbols and think they're evidence of aliens, others might interpret them as just personal codes or just doodles. Maybe even ways Napoleon expressed his thoughts and anxieties.
So, back to speculation again. But it does add yet another layer to the whole mystery of Napoleon. Even in his private writings, it's like he was hinting at something that goes beyond the conventional understanding of his time.
Exactly. Whether he meant to do it or not, Napoleon left a legacy that's still debated and inspires people's imagination.
It's almost as if he wanted us to keep searching, to keep asking questions, to keep looking for the truth.
Maybe that's his greatest legacy. The lasting power of mystery and the never-ending quest for understanding.
So, welcome back. We've been on this deep dive into some really fascinating and honestly pretty strange theories about Napoleon Bonaparte. And even from just these less conventional sources you shared, it's clear the guy was complicated, way more than just a brilliant military mind,
Yeah, it seems like the more we learn, the more mysterious Napoleon becomes. It's like we're putting together this puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing, and the ones we do have, they don't quite fit together like they should.
Right. We've talked about his strategic genius and the idea of advanced technology helping him win his battles, and how weirdly accurate some of the prophecies about his life were. And then there's the whole thing about government cover-ups to hide the truth about what he knew.
And what gets me is that none of these things can really explain Napoleon on their own. It's how they all come together, how all these different threads are woven together, that makes his story so captivating and, I guess, ultimately so confusing.
I'm curious, after looking at all these sources, what do you think is the most interesting part of the Napoleon enigma? Like, what makes you think, okay, maybe there really is something extraordinary happening here?
For me, it's the timing of things. A lot of sources talk about battles where Napoleon's decisions, his actions, like his ability to know what the enemy was going to do seemed almost too perfect. Like, it couldn't have just been normal military strategy. Even some of the people who were alive back then, experienced generals who fought alongside him or against him, they were amazed. Almost like he had this sixth sense on the battlefield,
Like we talked about the Battle of Austerlitz earlier, where Napoleon just seemed to know exactly what his enemies were going to do before they did it. It was like he was playing chess and always a few moves ahead.
Yeah, and this pattern, it keeps coming up throughout his campaigns, whether it was intuition or a deep understanding of people, or maybe something else entirely. Napoleon was really good at predicting and controlling events to get what he wanted.
So are we back to that earpiece idea? Yeah. Some kind of advanced technology that gave him an advantage? Or could it be, like some sources say, that he really did have this gift for prophecy, the ability to see the future?
It's easy to want one clear answer, isn't it? But I think the best part of this whole deep dive is that it's so ambiguous. It lets us consider all these possibilities and realize that we don't know everything. Maybe it was a combination of things. Brilliance, perfect timing, and maybe even forces that we just don't understand yet.
It's crazy to think that even centuries after his death, people are still so curious about Napoleon. He's not just a name in a history book anymore. He's like this symbol that people use to understand their own ideas about ambition, power, and what it means to be human.
That's a really interesting point. Napoleon's legacy is like a mirror, It shows us how fascinated we are with greatness and how much we want to understand the forces that shape history. And maybe it even shows our fear that we don't really have control over things.
So what do we learn from all this? Was Napoleon a hero, a villain, a visionary, a pawn in some big cosmic game? Or was he, like some sources say, a channel for something bigger than himself, a force of nature that can't really be put into any one category?
I don't think there's an easy answer to that, and maybe that's the whole point. Napoleon's story makes us confront the fact that things are complicated, that we don't know everything, and that some mysteries might just stay mysteries forever.
Well said. I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Napoleon Bonaparte. We've talked about a lot, explored some really fascinating theories, and hopefully we've given you some new things to think about.
Don't forget, the search for understanding is a journey, not a destination. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep your mind open. You never know what other mysteries are out there in history, just waiting to be discovered.
Thanks for being with us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep wondering, and most importantly, keep exploring the world with curiosity and a sense of wonder.